Chapter 5. With one son 4 years old, one 2 years old, and the third only 4 weeks old, we started out for Alaska and then on to the Aleutians. The most significant event on that trip was yet another evidence of divine assistance. Baha'u'llah states that if we should arise to aid his cause, the concourse on high and angels rank upon rank will rush to our aid. One night after we had bounced over the rocks and ruts of the Alcan Highway and were deep into the Yukon Territory, hundreds of miles from civilization, we pitched our little 6x6-foot tent. The rush of a mountain stream, the beautiful light of a full moon, the sighing of the breeze through the pines, the babies all sound asleep. At first, as I lay on the hard ground and listened to the unfamiliar night sounds, I realized how completely we had turned to God and how, from now on, He alone would be our security. Gone forever was the false security of the material world. The tent began to be filled up with the divine concourse. Such warmth, such love, such tenderness and compassion was felt on every side that each rock, shrub, and bush around that little tent reverberated with peace, 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 and praise and glorification of God. This time I was not in a state of semi-consciousness, but fully awake, and with both outer and inner faculties turned to the realm of light. Words fail me in describing that most glorious confirmation. Every atom of my being was set afire with the love of God, and that overwhelming feeling of nearness to God has not left me for one moment since that time. My continual prayer is, O my God, keep me firm and steadfast in thy path. I can conceive no greater hell than the most burning fire of separating myself from this nearness. Praise be to God, the Lord of all the worlds. Upon our arrival in Anchorage, we pounded the streets and found that there were no jobs available in the Aleutians, that the islands were destitute, that the natives who lived there, for the most part, were on government relief or worked at the government sealing operation in the Pribilof Islands. Every door was firmly closed in our faces, yet we took the tools of courage and determination to fulfill God's will, and tore the door right off the hinges. We know God's will. I have here before me as I write a shelf full of the holy writings. Every word, every sentence, every page filled with the will of our beloved for us, His children. Please God, may we achieve, in accordance with our preordained capacities, complete and faithful obedience to your decree. During the crusade we had Shoghi Effendi, and now we have the plans of our Universal House of Justice for guidance. My eternal prayer for you, each and every one, is that you will arise with love and wisdom to fulfill your heart's desires in this heavenly realm of complete and pure obedience. Elaine and I learned that the only forms of transportation to the Aleutians were by air or by a 10-day boat trip. First, I went to the owner of the airlines. He was very blunt and tried to discourage me. He said, "Leave those people alone. They have their religion." I replied, "Praise be to God that they do. If they really have a religion, you can be assured that we would be the last ones in the world to try to take it away from them. Our purpose is to teach them the truth of what they have and the unity with what others possess." Suffice it to say that we did not get passage on his airline due to our lack of funds and the owner's desire to keep us away. That left the monthly mail boat. Off we went to Seward to meet this boat, and if at all possible, to book passage. I boarded the MV Garland, with the prayer, the remover of difficulties, pulsating through me. "Captain," I said, "I want to book passage for myself, my wife, and 3 young sons to Unalaska in the Aleutians." "What in God's name do you want to go out there for?" he asked. "That is exactly," I replied, "God's name." I went on to give him the news of the dawning of the new light of God, Baha'u'llah, and our desire to share this with the native people of the Aleutians. The captain was very much impressed and said, "I like your spirit, young man, and I'll tell you what I am going to do. I'm going to take you, your family, and all your luggage out to Unalaska for $120, and the next month I'm going to bring you all back for nothing." I might add that 8 years later he stopped at the local Hazaratul Quds in Unalaska for literature. On the trip out, through some of the world's most ferocious seas, we all became sick. I slept on the mess hall table, and Elaine and the children slept in the liquor closet for the first part of the journey until a room was made available. Word of our arrival had preceded us to Unalaska, our own virgin goal of the 10-year crusade, via the newspapers. We were met with a form of prejudice and hate we had never before experienced. So that you may better understand the welcome we received, I would like to share with you some of the background I have discovered over many years concerning the history and legends of these beloved Aleut people. From the beginning that has no beginning to the end that has no end, divine favor and mercy have surrounded God's creatures. And Baha'u'llah's words, "I have been with you always," show that no people are left unattended by the direction and guidance of the All-Merciful. In the Old Testament, it was written to those dwelling in the Holy Land at the time that they must build an ark, and within the ark were to be placed the tablets of God, and then, as the story goes, if the people would care for the ark and those tablets, God would be their God, and they would be his people. As man has evolved, his spiritual needs have changed. It is apparent that in those days, man needed something he could feel, see, and touch. And God, in his infinite wisdom, fulfilled those needs. On the other side of the world, we picked up the old Aleut legend. All the islands from Unimak west were devoid of trees. Yet the legend says that one great tree grew on the island of Umnak, in the city that today is called Nikoloski. Sometime God came to these children of the kingdom and told them that this was his tree, and if they would take care of it and protect it, he would be their God, and they would be his people. Surely no one can read this without acknowledging all are his servants and all abide by his bidding. Such was the devotion of these people towards God that their greatest aspiration in life was to visit this spot in their lifetime and circle around the tree, giving praise and thanks to God. I might add that these true and fervent lovers of God would come from as far away as Kodiak, which was and is covered with trees, and traverse with their precious families 600 miles of the foulest seas and weather imaginable. Their only transportation was a tiny skin boat, their only resource the sea itself, and they made that pilgrimage to the tree of their heart's desire. What devotion, what love, what sacrifice! Now we leave legend and come to history. The invaders, in their quest for furs, gold, and wealth, swept eastward and found the Aleuts, who were brave, fearless, hard workers, and sons of the sea, to be ideal slaves to aid in the rich harvest of fur seals and sea otters. With no knowledge of the Aleut language, customs, or legends, the invaders saw these blessed people prostrating themselves around a tree, and the clergy of the invaders arbitrarily gave the order for destroying this pagan god. The tree was not easily severed, for those spiritual giants defended it with spear and knife against the guns of the invaders. Finally, with the island soaked in blood, in the name of that tender-hearted Christ, who so loved mankind, he could not endure the least pain and heartache in anyone, the evil of the invaders was achieved and the tree fell. History says that every male Aleut on Unalaska Island over the age of 7 was killed. Gracious God, by what stretch of the imagination could anyone condemn a child of 7 for paganism? If Christ had come himself to this distant land to find these children had been led astray, what would have been the actions of this divine King? Even the most elementary knowledge of his book suffices to show that he, with love, tenderness, and wisdom, and kindness, would have led them to the ocean of life. Do we not have the example of Baha'u'llah himself, when he came upon the dervish who claimed to be cooking and eating God? What more base thought can ever be imagined? Baha'u'llah dismounted from his horse, lovingly embraced this dervish, and with complete love and tenderness led this errant soul to a true understanding of the unknowable nature of God. So completely did he win his heart that the dervish, abandoning his pot and fire, followed after Baha'u'llah, singing praise, thanks, and glorification to the one true God. Such also was the way of Christ, and so must be the way of those who desire to follow after him in his name. The cutting of the tree did not terminate the pilgrimage of the Aleuts. Still, those pure and stout-hearted men, and throwing themselves at the tree stump, they would cry out to God, asking his forgiveness, since they had not been obedient in protecting his trust. The invaders built a church near the spot, and over the tree stump they built a small house with no openings. They would tell the little children that inside the building were evil spirits that had already caught their parents, and that therefore they must not go near, or the evil spirit would get them also. There were no windows or doors in order to keep the evil spirits inside. Now, with the entrance of the cause of God into this dead and desolate area, what tremendous spiritual potential would we find hidden in these beautiful hearts, if their past devotion could be used as an example. Like a flower that begins to open, they will surely one day add their sweet fragrance to God's divine garden.